Moin moin, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another IEM review. And today for you I have a super high budget set. We have the 02 from our friends at 7 Hertz in cooperation with Crinacle. Yes, today we are finally taking a look at one of the most hype budget sets ever, and we figure out if this thing actually is as good as the hype says or not. And yeah, as usual, quick packaging accessories. That's the packaging. It's small, it has thin cardboard. It is basically exactly what you would find at cheap KZs, cheap SimGod, anything else. It's exactly the same, just with a different print on it. When you open it, and this also looks exactly like the cheap KZ. So you have this like transparent plastic on top that you lift off, and then get greeted with the IEMs, which would be in here, which I've removed. And then you get greeted with the accessories, which of course include a cable, and then these random set of differently colored ear tips. And yeah, these are totally usable ear tips. They're not my favorites, they're a bit on the harder side, as you can see when I try to squish this here. Not my favorite, but they probably get the job done for most. And we also come here in S, M, and L, so you should be okay for the most part. And then next, let's get the IEM. And here is the bad boy. Yes, that's the Crinacle 02, which as you can see, I'm currently struggling to get the 2-pin connector out. It's sitting very tight in here. Actually, I'm not going to risk it, I just leave the 2-pin in as it is now. And yeah, that also is the first criticism here already. This 2-pin connector here in is tight, very tight. Actually so tight I'm afraid to remove it. Other than that, the build quality of this for the price of like 30 bucks in the EU, like in euros, right? Versus I think like 25 or $26, it's fine. This comes with a relatively thin plastic shell, as you can see here. It has a metal faceplate on the top, and that's pretty much the most important details about the build. Yeah, everything else is similar to most other IEMs at this price point, so it's like a 3-part design here, the bottom shell, the top part of the shell, and then the faceplate. The gluing together here is done pretty okay. You can see the seams around here, you can feel it with your fingernail, but it's not too big. And also the L&R indicator here being just barely visible is not a good idea in my opinion. But it's totally fine for the price point here. Also totally fine is the front mesh here. As you can see, you have this like plate, and then beneath that there is an actual filter, and I think which is the sides, I think this is the side where the filter actually is bent, as you can see that here. That was not me, it basically came with the filter. That was kind of weird, and so I just pushed it a bit down, and yeah, now you can see the filter here is bent. And yeah, behind that, also visible, there's a tuning filter here, which probably is there to reduce some upper treble fatigue. I would assume probably something like 8K or so will be reduced by this filter. And yeah, this price point, it's okay overall. It's not great, and I definitely there's better things out there, but also not bad at all. And then next we come to a cable. And I mean, if you have seen some of the cheaper KZs, this is basically the same cable you get there. So this is like 2 flat cables here. Thankfully, similar to the cheap KZs, what these flat cables do, they don't actually tangle that much. So there's definitely worse cables, again, for this price point out there. And what these cables also are, well, yeah, they are thin. They are a bit flimsy feeling overall, but it's not the worst I have seen. And the aluminium connector here is also absolutely fine. Again, it lacks something to grip on, it's a bit slippery, but for a price point, like, who cares? It's totally okay. Going further up here, we have the 7 Hertz logo on the splitter, and above that we have the chin slider, which has a bit of friction, but definitively not enough, and it won't work in real life, but at least it has a bit of friction. And again, for a price point, I mean, it's okay. And then last but not least, we have the ear hooks here. And let me quickly unhook this around here. Yep, rubberization, as you can see here, is on the thicker side of things around the cable. And well, it's not the most stiff overall. That means you can see like it doesn't have the most spring back function here. And also the ear hook is medium to medium big in the size, I mean the bending radius here. So this should be fine for most people, especially because the actual outlet here is definitely bigger than with other IEMs and comes in like a 45-degree angle out. So it should be absolutely okay. And yeah, next, let me quickly look at my notes. Yeah, comfort and fit. And yeah, it might not be that apparent in the pictures, but this is a rather big IEM for a single DD set. Especially because you can see the DD sitting actually here is way smaller. They could probably shrink the casing here by like 40-50% and will still be okay overall. So yeah, that means this is definitely on the bigger side for single DD IEMs. And also adding to this is that the actual insertion is not the longest, as you can see in probably this view best. Combining with the not super ergonomic shell shape here, yeah, I think some people will have problems getting this inserted properly. That means that I will absolutely recommend, if you go for this, find yourself a longer tip. Something like the crystal tip here. That will definitely work a bit better. Or for that matter, also the ST35 tip, which are also not the shortest, will work better than shorter tips. Just because, yeah, this is not inserting long enough. If you go for a longer tip here, I think this is fine in terms of comfort. It's again not the greatest, especially because also the nozzle is not the thinnest, but it's also not the widest overall, and I don't really have many complaints in terms of comfort and fit. Outside, as I said, that this is not the most ergonomic and not the biggest shell shape, and thankfully, yeah, with a longer tip, you can also fix the nozzle length here a bit. So overall, okay, but not great. And then next, isolation. Yeah, it's a budget set. You can see the plastic is thin, and that means in general it's isolating okay-ish. It's definitely a bit below average, especially because, yeah, the plastic is thin, the nozzle is not so long. So yeah, it will not be enough for busy environments. But if you are outside and it's not that loud, or if you're in the office or at home, it's absolutely okay. It's foam, one could say, even if the city is not that loud, would be fine. But it's generally not on the good side of things in terms of isolation. Then drivability. And yeah, this driver here comes with 32 ohms of impedance at 108 decibels per watt at 1 kilohertz. And this means it's drivable as all of the other single DD sets out there. And in percentage, that means I noted like 85 to 90% you get on the random Apple dongle with basically no power. And if you up it a bit, for instance the up 5, I have the feeling again staging and bass impact get a bit tighter, it gets a bit more controlled, but it's not a lot. And if you up the power even more to my desktop setup, which has like 3 watts of power, you don't get any benefit whatsoever. So yeah, Apple dongle, absolutely fine. Now coming to sound, and of course as usual, first general sound characteristics, and yeah, that's probably the best thing about the 002. This thing comes in at a mild V-shape, respectively U-shaped signature here, and it goes for this, you could say, IEF neutral type of treble frequency response, and does this very well. And then we brings us to the upper treble regions. And per graph there's a peak at like, I think 13K or so. Let me quickly take a check out here. Yeah, at like 12.5K there's a peak in the upper treble. To my ear, this is not as pronounced as the graph does make it, but I think there might be a treble peak in the upper treble somewhere, because this generally has a lightly metallic timbre to it. It's again not a lot, and we talk about it more later, but it is noticeable to me. Definitely more noticeable than, for instance, here, the Nuo from Zigard, which I will compare with most of the time, because as you can see by graph, well, they are super close together, so it kind of makes sense for me to combine them both to each other. And then, yeah, going a bit further down at like 10K or like 9.5K, you have another peak here. And yeah, as you can also see in direct comparison to the Nuo seems to be a bit larger than that, or about on the same level, depending on which sides you're looking at. And yeah, this means generally this does have pretty decent energy here, without ever coming in the danger of having the 8K peaks here. And generally the detail retrieval for this price point is absolutely fine. And that combined with the frequency response further down, that means the dip at like 8K, and then yeah, the standard, or like around like 3K mark, there's no complaints here. This just sounds right to me. like really in acoustic jazz with vocals, or with anything, just normal acoustic jazz, metal, synthwave. It doesn't matter at all, just sounds absolutely right with the 0-2, and I have no complaints in terms of overall tonality here. Granted, I'm more of a treble boy, as I said before, so when I compare to Nuo, yeah, I just like the Nuo a tad more here. I think the Nuo is a bit more in my ballpark. It just has a bit more energy overall in the treble, and that's just my preference here. But yeah, I think for most people, 0-2 is exactly where they want to be, and yeah, there's no complaints in the treble. Now coming to the mids, and again, just going by graph, there's a bit of warmth going on, but not too much, and there's some good tonality, there's some good body. But in real life, and I'm not sure if this is due to the driver not being the most capable, yeah, the vocals actually come off as a bit recessed. That means, for instance, Linkin Park with Chester Bennington as a vocalist there, he's slightly pushed back in the mix. It's not like he is lacking too much, like there's a bit of lower intensity in the vocals, but it's actually not bad. It's just lightly recessed to my ear. And the same is true for other metal that I do like for the vocals, like Iron Maiden, Nothing More, Metallica, like all of the vocals were lightly pushed to the background. And yeah, I didn't have this feeling that much, for instance, here with the Nuo. Nuo has better mids, but because now we're coming to the good part of the 0-2, yeah, the bass again is very well done here. It's executed mostly between like 300 and 20 Hertz. And the pinner gain, the rise here is also pretty damn good, and you have much more sub bass than mid bass. And it means better tonality again being very well done, and it works for basically all genres you could throw at this. It's just the sub bass again, the quality is decent. I noticed, wait, let me quickly check out. Yep, 2 minutes 14 and a half or 2 minutes 15 on high volume. This is kind of average-ish, a bit above average even in terms of sub bass quality. But it doesn't matter because the overall bass tonality is pretty damn good here. And this is probably the main reason why you would want to get the 0-2 in combination with the nice treble tonality. This is one of those things, in my books, it's more V than U-shaped, just because the vocals are a bit recessed. But yeah, treble and bass very well tuned, and also technical for this level, absolutely fine. And then yeah, we come to the other technicalities like soundstage, layering and imaging, and what should I say, it's 3 layers most of the time, very occasionally 5 layers. Imaging is accurate enough, there's no complaints here, you can easily game with this. And while the soundstage is not like too cramped, it's still a bit on the smaller side. But again, for this price point, there's nothing to complain here, it's well done. And then yeah, separation, dynamic and coherence. And yeah, continuing strong, I think this is a pretty well separating IEM. Probably mostly because, yeah, the tuning is so well done, and that means even busy instrument lines in my fusion jazz songs are well separated here, and I don't have any problems. And then dynamics is not bad, so it's about on par, I would say, with again the Nuo, which also is not the most dynamic sounding IEM here, but it's not bad at all, and really for this price point, honestly, you'll be okay. And then we come to coherence and timbre, and yeah, as I said, this comes off as the most metallic of the budget IEMs I've heard in reasonable and recent past, I mean. So that means the Q1 Pro, which is a bit more expensive than this, while being brighter, didn't sound as metallic as the 0-2 did. And also the Nuo, which is also brighter than the 0-2, didn't sound as metallic as this does. I'm not sure if this is part due to the driver or partly due to the tuning, or because vocals or the mids are slightly recessed and this gives it a bit of a metallic feeling to it. But yeah, just want to say, of the bunch here, this one seems to be the most metallic to my ear. And again, considering the price point, this is not an issue, like really this is nitpicking. It basically brings me to a verdict now. This is a very good IEM, like in every metric I could think of, there isn't much to criticize here. Again, it doesn't isolate the best, it doesn't fit the best. And yeah, the cable is also not the best, but it's totally acceptable for the price. And with a tuning like this, which is probably what most people would want, but does most things so right, I don't see a reason why to not buy this. Again, I want to say my personal favorite is the Nuo here. I just like the Nuo more. The Nuo just doesn't sound as metallic. The mids of the Nuo are a bit better. And that means it will overall be to my ear a better IEM. But the 0-2 from the metrics that I would say objectively make a good IEM fits all of those metrics, and I kind of understand the hype in that sense. I just wouldn't hype it. It's one of another good budget set, just like Nur, just like the Q1 Pro. It's all slightly different flavors of what is good out there. And really, the budget segment at the moment, so competitive, you will be absolutely okay with most of the budget sets that you buy. And Zero is one of the good ones there. And yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, recommendations, or criticisms, please leave a comment. On Spector out.